hearing to receive, there we go, a report on findings and suggestions from the Economic Development Citizen Advisory Review Committee as required by state statutes, section 18-2715. And to kick off this discussion, we'll hear from Randy Gates, our City Finance Officer.
Yes, Your Honor. As you mentioned, state statutes require a Citizens Advisory Review Committee, or CARC. For citizens on our committee are Cindy Morrow, Brandon Day, Aaron Otten, Jan Einspar, and Kathy Means. I also serve on that committee as an ex officio non-voting member. Statutes require the CARC meet at least once every 6 months and report to the City Council on its findings and suggestions at a public hearing called for that purpose. The CARC met on December 6th, and the CARC report is included in the agenda packet. When you look at the CARC report, you'll see they did several things, including review of the city's Economic Development Fund. We didn't have much for expenditures, our only expenditure being the final debt service payment on the economic development bonds. The only revenue we had was some minor payments for late property taxes that come in and some interest income. Cash balance at October 31st was a little over $298,000. We added and reported back to the CARC, the council added as they recommended at the last CARC meeting, filming, and they also suggested early child care and education as qualifying businesses. They wanted all the qualifying businesses the state had added since we last visited our economic development plan to be added, and those two were film production and early childhood care and education, which the council did. They did that on October 4th. We also provided the CARC a brief economic development update, talked about Bradford Business Park. That infrastructure is substantially complete out there for phase 1, and economic development staff is marketing this property. Economic development staff's been working with a potential buyer chosen by Greater Norfolk Economic Development Foundation for redevelopment of the old Alco property at 1st and Norfolk Avenue. And we're also working on co-working space in downtown Norfolk with Invest Nebraska. The CARC found at the conclusion of the meeting that the city's economic development program was operating in compliance with the budget and the voter-approved economic development plan. I'd answer any questions.
Okay. Thank you, Randy. Any questions? Randy, that number again, the remaining funds within the LB 840 account, around $300,000, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. This is a public hearing, so anyone wishing to make comment can do so now. Okay, seeing and hearing no one, I will move to close the public hearing and advance to item number 23 on your council agenda and open this public hearing at the request of Alvin M. Willems, successor trustee of the Melvin H. Willems Revocable Trust, to consider a zoning change from A, Agricultural District, to RR, Rural Residential District, and property addressed as 4404 South 1st Street. And to kick off this public hearing, we'll hear from Val Grimes, our city planner.
Thank you. This piece of property is actually a total of about 160 acres. It goes from 1st Street all the way over to Highway 81, just south of Sherwood Road. However, this specific zone change is just a 3-acre lot that they want to zone to RR because there's an existing house there. If you decide to approve this, we'd recommend that you only approve it on the first reading tonight, because number 25 that was removed from the full agenda is actually the plat that goes with this zone change. And the owner lives in California and did not get us all the Mylars and signed subdivision and everything back to us in time. So to assure that there isn't 2 zonings on one piece of land, if you do decide to approve this zone change, we'd recommend just like on the first reading until the plat comes through.
Thank you, Val. Any questions?
I got one, I guess. What's the purpose of just this little portion of property changing?
We actually requested he do a preliminary plat through Planning Commission, and he's not quite ready to do anything with the whole 160 acres if he wants to do anything himself or sell it off to a developer. So really all the preliminary plat is some proposed preliminary major road systems throughout this piece of property, because he just has an interested party in just that one piece of lot that contains the house, and he didn't want to cut up any of the rest of it at this time.
Any other questions for Bob? This is a public hearing, so anyone wishing to make comment can do so now. Okay, seeing and hearing no one, I will ask for a Planning Commission report, please.
The Norfolk Planning Commission held a public hearing on December 7th, 2021 at the request of Alvin M. Willems, successor trustee to the Melvin H. Willems Revocable Trust, to consider a zoning change from A, Agricultural District, to RR, Rural Residential District, on property addressed as 4404 South First Street. The Planning Commission recommends approval of the request with a 9-0 vote.
Okay, with that, I will close the hearing and move to item number 24. Looking for a motion to consider ordinance number 5761, approving a zoning change from A to RR zoning on property addressed as 4404 South First Street.
I'll offer for consideration ordinance number 5761.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion or questions on this, council? Okay, hearing none, short title, please.
An ordinance of the City of Norfolk, Madison County, Nebraska, amending the zoning district map of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska, providing when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect, and providing for the publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
Okay, with that, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative. Ordinance number 5761 carries on first reading.
Okay, that moves us to our regular agenda, and given the removal of item number 25, we will move to item number 26. And I'd look for a motion to consider ordinance number 5762, appointing the Director of Administrative Services to replace the Human Resources Director as a City Council designated Retirement Committee representative and trustee for the city's police pension plan, fire pension plan, and employee retirement plan for those other than police officers and firefighters, and further designating Lyle Lutt as a successor trustee to Sheila Shukai for these same plans.
I'll offer for consideration ordinance number 5762.
Okay, motion and second. And to hear some background on this, we'll hear from Randy Gates, our city finance officer.
Yes, Your Honor. As you know, Sheila Shukai is retiring as Human Resources Director at the end of this month. Lyle Lott, as Director of Administrative Services, will be taking over Sheila's duties related to the police, fire, and general employees' retirement plans. The plan administrator and City Council designated retirement committee members for these plans are named by position, and that is the Human Resources Director and Finance Officer. The trustees for these plans are individually named as Sheila Shukai and Randy Gates. This ordinance would name Lyle Lutt as Director of Administrative Services to replace Sheila Shukai as Human Resources Director in these capacities for all three of these plans. I recommend approval on all three readings so we don't have a lapse in the plan positions.
Okay, thank you, Randy. Any questions on this, council? Okay, no discussion. Short title, please.
An ordinance of the City of Norfolk, Nebraska, to appoint a successor City Council designated member of pension plan retirement committees, a successor plan administrator, and a successor plan trustee for the retirement plans for police officers, firefighters, and employees of the City of Norfolk, other than police officers and firefighters, respectively, to provide when this ordinance shall be in full force and effect, and to provide for the publication of this ordinance in pamphlet form.
Okay, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative. Ordinance number 5762 carries on first reading.
Your Honor, I'll make a motion to suspend the rules and pass this ordinance on second and third. Second.
A motion and second to suspend the rules and approve on second and third readings. If no further discussion, please vote.
All council members present voting in the affirmative. Ordinance number 5762 carries on second and third.
Okay, that takes us to the end of our regular agenda and moves us into a public comment period, a time in which any member of the public can come forward with any concern or question or commendation or airing of grievances. Preferably not the last one, but welcome, sir.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. My name is Gene Reed, and I'm here to address an issue that comes up with an intersection on Bel Air and Roosevelt and Highway 81 with the light that's there. I live in that area, and there's a consistent problem with people running the red light going north and south. So I addressed this on July 3rd in 2018 to my council members Dick File and Corey Granquist at the time. The temporary solution was to increase police presence, which I could not verify, and they put in a temporary radar system. The radar system was put on the south-going side just before around Maple Street to slow people down from 45 to 35 as they go over the hill, where the actual problem is a street light at Roosevelt and Bel Air. My wife was hit in the intersection on November 4th, so now this has become a very personal thing to me. And as we pull up to the light on Roosevelt to go south, we have to wait for the green light and then wait the count of 5 or better to pull up, look for any vehicles coming from the south. We can't see a little bit because we are obstructed a little bit by some small trees at the cemetery to pull out so we don't get hit. Let's see, so on November 4th, I did email my city council representatives, Corey Hildebrandt and Corey Granquist, and they replied and said I should talk to Steve Ramus, the city engineer. So on the 16th of November, I left a voicemail for Mr. Ramus on the 16th of November and sent an email to him on the 22nd so that there was a documented trail of what was going on. Voicemails don't give you any history on it. I did receive an email from Mr. Ramus on the 22nd. He said he would forward my email to the department, Nebraska Departments of Road, and he also stated that he would call me the following week. On December 8th, I emailed Mr. Ramus again stating that I did not receive a phone call, and I asked him if he could set up a time and date we could discuss this, as I am on the road for my job and I would like to set aside time for him personally to discuss this. I did receive a call from Mr. Ramus on December 17th. I was traveling in western Nebraska between Valentine and Chadron, if you've ever been out in that area. Cell reception is a little sketchy in places out in there. So I had about a 15-minute conversation with him, and he talked about the work that was going to be done on the corridor, but in my eyes, that's more of a landscaping project, not a traffic flow. He did mention some options of narrowing the lanes to slow people down. I don't know if you go down to 11-foot lanes on 81, how that's going to affect the traffic flow, because the truckers, once they get from Prospect and they're shifting gears going up over the top of the hill at Maple Street headed north, they're just hammered down to get through that, and if they see a yellow light, they just push it a little further to the floor. It's a lot of semis that run that light, and also a lot of vehicles as well. He asked what my expectations were, and I would like to lower the speed limit from Maple to Benjamin to 35 miles an hour. It's 10 miles an hour. I don't know why this Department of Roads or whoever determined that 45 from Maple to the Roosevelt-Bel Air intersection has to be 45 when we turn them loose at 50 north of Benjamin. I think that would be more than adequate. There's been several deadly accidents at both Benjamin and Highway 81 and the Bel Air Roosevelt Highway 81 intersection. I feel the city should take its residents' safety as the main priority, and whatever is possible to reduce exposure to an accident at these intersections. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. Did we get you to, there you go. Sign in.
Steve, I know we had some emails, Corey and I both did, and then along with you, but part of our conversation was that, with it being a highway, Department of Roads would have to look at that situation also. So, obviously, Gene's not mistaken, there has been some bad accidents, obviously, now one including his wife, but have we heard anything back from Department of Roads, and where do we stand on that?
We've partially heard from them. So they did go back and do a crash analysis, or crash assessment just based on actual incidents that have occurred through the corridor. That analysis in and of itself doesn't, in their opinion, merit any change to the corridor. In terms of speed management and, can't deny the fact that there have been accidents and or other incidences in the corridor. Certainly it is desirable to try and lower the speed so that potentially can reduce the amount of accidents, but also reduce the severity of those accidents. The DOT is engaged kind of in a, I don't want to call it a safety study, but they are engaged in a study of that corridor in terms of signals and signal management. I did push an email off to Kevin Damagala following the initial contact and email, kind of discussing in generalities the concept of speed management through the corridor. I do think there's an opportunity as a function of those two conversations going on right now, and with the annexation and the movement of the city boundary to the north, that in of itself will cause some reevaluation in terms of what we can do in terms of some of like the flashing signs, that type stuff, flashing speed signs, potentially pushing a lower speed limit further north. Those should be on the table now more so than they were with the old city limit line there on the north side. So all of those things do play in. One of the things you'll hear us refer to quite often when we're looking at speeds is a speed study. The 85th percentile speed is kind of where we try to set the speed limit. It's pretty much a standard kind of across the United States that's used. Looking at the striping of the lanes through there, if we're I don't know what we currently have off the top of my head, we might have 13-foot lanes in there now. If we can stripe those back to 12, 11 and a half, actually put an outside lane line on in addition to an inside lane line, that squeezing down of the traffic lane does lower the speeds. So if we can lower the speed or encourage a lower speed in conjunction with a speed study, and we might be able to hit an 85th percentile to help support a lower speed, posted speed through those areas. So, I mean, those are all the things that, or some of the things that would be considered in terms of looking at that. And like I say, I do think with the annexation and the movement of the city limits to the north provides another potential tool for us in terms of that analysis.
Am I wrong in thinking we can't just change the speed limit without approval with the state because it's a highway? Am I right?
That's correct. It would take an engineered speed study to support that lowered speed limit through there. So, looking at engineering tools to help encourage a lower speed so that when we do a speed study, we're actually seeing lower speeds that can help us. So the two kind of work together. You can't just put a lower speed in there and then hope everybody's going to run that speed. They will adjust to the corridor itself and run a speed that the corridor kind of allows.
But enforcement of the traffic regs is Norfolk PD, is that correct? Okay. What can be done to, because sir, I see the same thing you do. Quite often I live right in that neighborhood and have to travel up that way north on 81, and I see a lot of semis breaking through the yellow lights and running the reds and all of that, but I never see anybody stopped. So, Chief, maybe you can shed a little light on that for us.
And also just in terms of looking to some of the stuff that's going to be coming, pretty soon we're going to have bus routes on those corridors as well as bus stops. And so you're gonna see that corridor change in functionality here in the next 6 months. You know, that'll just be another component that in and of itself is gonna help slow down that corridor.
Regarding that, you know, on the south side of town, we got a flashing light going in and coming out right when you get over the overpass. I don't know why we just don't have a flashing light on the, you know, just north of there, because that would help, in my opinion. Especially when you got a rack on the back and you need that's flashing, you know, because that's what happens. Those guys, light changes and they're just, they can't stop.
I think it helps a lot when you head out towards Eisenhower and you get
I
the
agree.
flashing.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
see it, you know, you have to slow down.
And so, and we did have just, I think last Thursday, Wednesday, Thursday, we did have some conversation with the DOT about a flasher, specifically on the south side coming off the viaduct. The conversation kind of blended towards, in that particular instance, they feel that, because I know we've had some red light runs down there, it also functions the other way. You know, yes, some drivers will see that flash and they'll stop. Other drivers will see that flash and actually speed up going down the hill to hit, you know, so they can make that light. And I get that logic. So it can work both ways.
Chief, before you, just a second here. I think when we, Stephen, when we had discussions a year or so ago on Benjamin Avenue and where we're going to hit 13th Street with Benjamin Avenue, we had talked about putting one of those lights in there. I don't know. I think we had requested it. I don't recall whether it's going in or not.
I don't think we hit, to get it to that point, the city limits were too close. And I do think, you know, that's one of the things with the city limits moving further north. I think we'll be able to make the DOT requirements for that signing now.
Okay, so that's in your court?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Okay, Chief.
To address your question, as far as the enforcement piece, yes, the city of Norfolk, as well as State Patrol and the county sheriff, we all have the authority in that particular corridor. We do traffic selectives, we call them, where when people have the time, they'll go someplace and hit that particular intersection or that area heavily. North 81 is probably one of the most enforced areas as far as selectives, because we have a lot of complaints up there. So we occasionally hit it. I mean, it's not every day, but you know, it's as we get complaints, we'll work it for a while, and then we go to the next area that somebody had a complaint. One of the challenges that we have with Highway 81, the whole corridor, is we have different people coming through every day. So if it's in a particular neighborhood, we can enforce something in those neighborhoods. We can educate the people that live in that neighborhood, and then they remember. When it's different people every time, we can stop them today, and then they're gone, and the next day it's somebody completely different that doesn't have that learning curve to have a long-term effect. So we continue to enforce it, pretty regular. I wasn't prepared for the question, so I can't go and give you an exact number of how often we do it, but if there's one area that we hit heavily, it's that, as well as East 275. We hit that one pretty heavily as well, because we get some complaints on that for speeds. So yes, it is enforced. It doesn't have a long-term effect just because it's a different people driving through every day, traveling through. Does that answer your question?
It does, thank you.
Okay.
Chief, it piques my curiosity. How many different speed limit zones are there within the 81 corridor through Norfolk?
I'm going to, without knowing for sure, I'd say 35, 40, 45, and 50.
There, it does go up to 50. Okay.
As you get way north
Yeah,
on the north edge,
yeah,
which is now, of course, city limits and.
right. So Steve, what you're saying is that now that particular area is not as close to our boundaries. It's more within city proper. It's justified to look at a lower limit there. Okay, and we're making that argument to Department of Roads or Department of Transportation. Okay. All right.
So,
Thank you.
Chief, would you like to see a flashing light to notify the speed limits reducing, and there's traffic lights coming ahead versus, I don't see the value in narrowing the roadway.
Right.
With
Of course,
a paint.
some of those are engineer questions, but as I'm coming into any community, the flashing yellow lights before you get to the light are very accurate. I mean, because I drive a lot of them, as soon as I see them, I start slowing down, because I know I'm not gonna be able to beat it. Like somebody said, some people try to beat it, but I know they're very effective. Without looking at the guidelines as to the distances of those, I mean, those are gonna be placed out quite a ways to effectively give you the warning before you get to those intersections. And in town, I think the traffic lights are probably too close to be real effective on that. That's more of an engineering question. I don't know how effective they would be, but the more advanced warning you can get, the better. But you know, it's the trucks are a big problem up there, as much as anything. If we could get the distance, the flashing lights would help, but that's going to be a Department of Roads question if they would allow that or not. There's many times we've had those discussions, and we always end up having to have those conversations with them before we can make any changes.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? All right, thank you.
Steve, you mentioned the potential of a bus stop in that general area. Do we know exactly where that might be? Yeah.
There'll be a bus stop, pretty sure at Sheridan, is that the south side of the cemetery? And there'll be a bus stop right there at Sheridan on both sides. That's the, I can't remember if there's actually one up at Benjamin and 81, on 81, but, so Sheridan's the first one that I can recall on 81.
Okay. All right. Any further discussion surrounding that, council? Thank you, Mr. Reed, for bringing that to our attention. We'll continue to have these conversations with Department of Transportation and do our best to keep you updated as to those.
Feel free to reach out to me anytime.
Okay. All right. Anyone else as part of the public comment period? Okay. Seeing and hearing no one, we'll close that session. And given that we do not have the need to go into closed session for any discussion in that vein, we will skip item number 28, and that concludes this meeting of the Norfolk City Council. Have a good evening.